How can you get started teaching a second language in your homeschool? So I am going to assume that you've heard all of the benefits for children learning a second language and that I have your buy-in that this is a good idea. Now, how do you get started? And once you've gotten started, how can you ensure that you're actually making progress instead of just learning and practicing the same 10 phrases for months that stretch into years? How can you begin and how can you keep going? Second-generation homeschooler, and I have a passion for teaching and including language learning in our homeschools. So in this video, I am going to be talking through how to get started, how to make that initial leap into including this into your daily learning routines, your daily homeschool rhythm. And I'm also going to give you some just practical on-the-ground strategies of realistically how to make language learning work with your homeschooled students, particularly with the younger ages when they require more involvement from you. Number one, first of all, the very first step to get started is that you have to choose your language. And my advice here to ensure success and to ensure progress is to choose that language very carefully. Choose it for a good reason, a reason that you'll be able to hold on to when the going gets tough. So choose it for a good reason. Many of the reasons that families look to are their own heritage, their family's heritage, their family's connections, family members that speak a particular language. That's a really, really strong reason to choose a language. Another one is geography. Where do you live? What kind of languages are spoken around you? Many people feel like they live in monolingual areas, but actually, once you start opening your eyes and looking around for it, you might notice more languages being spoken around you than you might have at first thought of. Finally, third reason is just pure interest. Sometimes kids or families or you just have a really natural interest and intrigue with a certain language, and maybe there's no heritage reason to learn it, or maybe there's no geography reason to learn it, but it just makes your heart sing. That's also a good reason. It might not be as easy to dive into as when you do have family heritage or when you do have the geography connections, but that also can work. So begin by choosing your language. Number two, if you as the parent don't already speak the language that you've chosen to include in your homeschool, be prepared to learn it alongside your child. Now, I do want to tell you, you absolutely can get started including a language in your homeschool even if you don't speak it. Don't be intimidated by that. We have access to so many amazing resources that can make it possible. However, especially if you have younger children, children who aren't like teenagers, who can really, be self-motivated to learn and fly at their own pace. If you have younger children, you're probably going to have to be involved, and you will probably find yourself needing to learn, needing to stretch that old brain and grow in language skills yourself. So prepare yourself that this is going to be a family thing. This is something that's going to involve me, an area where I am going to be learning and growing my skills. From all of my experience, I really feel that I've seen the best success with children gaining language skills when their parents are very much involved in the process, very much involved to learn the language, use the language, and keep encouraging that and making it a family ordeal. Number three, choose your resource. Choose your core resource that is going to take you through this language learning journey. And it doesn't have to be just one. It could be one main one and a bunch of things thrown in on the side. You got to choose what's going to work best for your family. And I will tell you right off the bat, the absolute best foreign language curriculum is the one that you're actually going to use. So I am not going to give you one clear answer that, hey, use this curriculum. This will be the best for you. If you want questions, if you have a specific situation and you would like some suggestions of curriculums to look into, I am happy to answer your questions either in the comments or in an email or a DM. Go ahead and get in touch with me on Instagram at 7andallfamily. I can point you to different reviews and blog posts about language curriculums. I am always happy to help, and I am also going to leave some links that I have in the description down below for some curriculum options that you can check out. But the most important thing in doing your research of curriculum is to know yourself, know your homeschool, know your kids, and know what am I actually going to be able to work with? What is something that I'm actually going to pull out daily and regularly and keep using it and keep progressing in it? Now, depending on the language, you might have quite a few options or not very many options. That does tend to be dependent on language. Some languages have a lot more resources than others. I'm going to talk about some different options and some different approaches that you could go with, but I'm going to start by saying it's my opinion that foreign language, that second language learning, is very much worth investing money and investing time into. And usually you see that the more you're willing to invest as far as time in your day, and the more you're willing to invest as far as choosing to make these resources part of your home and part of your routine, the more you're willing to invest, usually the greater the results will be. Of course, that doesn't mean that if you buy an expensive curriculum and it sits on your shelf, that you will learn the language. That's unfortunately not how it works. Children learn languages easily, but not effortlessly. This is going to require effort no matter what curriculum you choose. So as you research curriculum options, I highly encourage you to think about what you most want and will most use in a curriculum. What approach do you need? And there's really a range of curriculum and learning options, because it's not just curriculum. On the one hand, you're going to have the most expensive option and the least teacher involvement or least work from you as the parent, and that's going to be more where you have private lessons with a native speaking teacher, private classes in person, or even online classes, online lessons with an actual live teacher. That's typically going to be your more expensive option. It can be very, very effective. Actually, most of my language learning happened in a classroom setting with an amazing teacher of those languages. So that was a great experience for me, but it's also a fairly costly way to learn a language. So on the one hand, there's that option, and then you can kind of slowly go toward the other end where you'll have cheaper or free options that are going to involve a lot more work from you on the front end as a parent. So somewhere after the live classes, either in person or with an online teacher, then you might have the computer-based courses or the completely computer-based courses, something like Rosetta Stone, where you don't really need to be involved as a parent. The student can do it more independently. There are a variety of apps. I say Rosetta Stone because that's, I think, the one almost everyone has heard of, where you just have a computer and you have a kid and you can just say, hey, go work on your language. I do think if you do solely that and you don't have the human interaction from either parent or teacher, it can be a little bit hard to make really meaningful progress, but that's a option, especially if you don't have a lot of time on your hands. Next on the list, you would have the semi-computer-based curriculum options, where they have part of the course is online, but there are also elements where the parent needs to be involved and the parent needs to be interacting and guiding and facilitating. This would be something like the Cultured Kid classes, where they do have computer elements, they have videos, they have songs to watch, but they also have elements where the parent is leading games or leading conversations and practicing and engaging in the language with their child. Then, if you don't want to incorporate screens or tech at all, there are traditional workbook-based language curriculums, there are literature-based language curriculums, and there are also just play-based or activity-based language curriculums like homeschool languages. There are homeschool languages that include no screen use or very, very little screen use, and those will require more of you as a teacher, that you are using this curriculum, basing your lessons off of what you read, but you are teaching and facilitating all the lessons. And then finally, at probably what is going to be the most work for you as a parent, is the DIY approach. Gathering together different resources, finding books, finding YouTube channels with songs, finding some printables, making stuff up on your own. That can be a lot of work, and that can be difficult to implement on a day-to-day basis. It can also sometimes be necessary. If you're trying to teach a language that there just really aren't a lot of curriculum options for, or it's really hard to find resources for, you really might need to do that more DIY approach, and you can do it. I'll cheer you on. You can do it if you have to. But for many of us, choosing one of these other options that gives us a little bit more guidance can definitely make language learning more doable and less of a mental load on an everyday basis. In my own homeschool, I have usually opted somewhere over here. Lessons from a native teacher, a native speaking teacher, can be really amazing, but those can also be a big commitment as far as finances and as far as time, and they can be difficult to fit into the schedule. But somewhere in the middle here, where I'm having a lesson plan to follow or where I'm having videos and I know I can progress through those, those can be very, very helpful. Something that's more in the middle here, where I have a curriculum and lesson plans and ideas and resources that I can follow and just keep making progress with, that tends to be where I fall and what is easy for me to implement regularly. Now next, whatever you do, whatever you choose, any of these curriculums, and I'm happy to chat about options with you or point you to other people that have reviewed different curriculums, but whatever you choose, just do it consistently. That's the secret sauce. Do it consistently and do it for a long time if you really want to see progress. A language is not learned in a month, and it's not learned in 2 months, regardless of what any clickbait YouTube videos might tell you. In reality, in the reality of everyday life, languages are built over years. They're built over years of time, and you just need to keep doing the work. So it's much better to choose some routine that you're working on, 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day versus 1 hour a week. It's much better to do small chunks that you can really do consistently every single day, not get discouraged, keep going. Don't stop after 1 month, take a break for a month and then get back to it, because you'll be starting over at square one. So decide, I'm gonna do this for 1 year, or I'm gonna do this for 2 years, and then I'm gonna look at where we are. Try to plan ahead to do this for a long period of time and do it really consistently. Bringing language into your everyday life over a long span of time will yield good fruit. So while I would say that a curriculum and having a plan helps with forward motion, consistency is really the thing that gets the job done. Consistency matters so much more than the specific resource that you pick. All right, now I'm going to be getting into the practical strategies of what does foreign language, second language class teaching, learning look like in a homeschool atmosphere. Number one is move. There is a lot of movement in teaching languages to children. If you feel like you look totally ridiculous, you are probably doing it right. Just about any good language curriculum will tell you this, but language is not best learned sitting at a desk without moving. It's best learned when you're driving a toy car through the house and you're shouting out directions. Turn left, turn right, go straight, go backwards. It's best learned through action. We're learning the word for up and we go up. We're learning the word for down and we go down, left or right. Can you tell we've been working on directions recently? But we're doing action verbs and we're moving our bodies in the action. Incorporate a lot of movement, especially with younger kids, but in all honesty, even with preteens and teenagers, movement is going to help trigger the memories and help cement vocabulary in the brain. So don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to look a little silly while you're doing it. Next, practical hint is to use a lot of imagery. Some curriculums really make use of this within the curriculum itself, but no matter what curriculum you're using, you can find ways to use visuals yourself. And I would suggest that using real objects tends to connect a lot better than visuals on a screen or visuals on flashcards or in a book. Those are very great when that's all the visual you can have. But for example, say you're learning about the word for cup. We're trying to build some kitchen vocabulary. This is actually going to connect and be a lot more memorable than this. This works. I have nothing against flashcards. You guys know I love my flashcards. But when you can use the real objects, that definitely does elevate the learning experience and tends to be very, very memorable. The next practical tip is to use songs. And you've probably heard this if you've studied language learning at all. So many curriculums and resources use songs, but why do they do that? It's because songs are incredibly memorable, number one, and number two, they help cement the patterns of a language into your brain because of that memory. So you're not learning, grammatically from a textbook that this is the correct word order, this is the correct way you put words together in a sentence. You just begin knowing how to do it naturally because you've been singing this song, you've been putting these words together in this correct order. So your brain starts to recognize the patterns of speech in that language. And a lot of people will tell you, just look for songs for native speaking kids, look for creators that are making Spanish songs for kids who already speak Spanish, or Chinese songs for, Chinese kids who already speak Chinese. That will be a lot of your recommendations, is to look for authentic materials from that culture. I want to say that if you're finding those types of songs intimidating, maybe don't start there, because songs designed for native speaking kids can be really fast and they can include a lot of vocabulary. And they can even be hard for you as the parent to figure out, wait, what are all the words in here? They just can be a lot when you're just starting a language. So I would say there is absolutely no shame in starting with songs that are specifically created for language learners, or songs that are translated from English songs, so that you kind of have those foundation memory pegs of what are the words saying here. I think it's totally actually great and helpful to start with those easier songs so that you can move on to the songs that are created for native speakers later on. So if the songs that are designed for native speakers are intimidating you, moving too fast, having too many words, just go ahead and step back into songs for learners or songs that are translated from English. Next practical tip is motivation. We all thrive with motivation. I know a lot of people look down on bribing children, but in reality, learning a language is hard and it is its own reward, but young kids kind of don't necessarily see the long-term view of where they're going to be when they can speak 2 languages or where they can speak 3 languages when they're all grown up. They might not be able to see that long view. We as parents have to see that for them. So don't be afraid to include motivation. And with little kids, it can be something as simple as a high five. I mean, tell my boys that they can give me the hardest high five that they can after they do something, and that is a huge motivation for them. But you know your kids best. Think about what practical thing can motivate them. Something I use sometimes is some screen time. Hey, you guys like to watch a song video in Spanish? We're going to do that after our Spanish lesson. Once we get to the end, we're going to get to watch a song video in Spanish and sing along. And sometimes simple screen time can be motivating enough while still providing more language input. But find what motivates your kids and use that. Don't call it bribery because, you know, that's looked down on. Call it motivation. And finally, find ways to use the language outside of lesson time. I highly recommend having a dedicated lesson time, having a dedicated curriculum, because I do feel like when you don't have that dedicated time, it can just kind of fall through the cracks and just not happen and not make progress. But let the language begin seeping out of the cracks of that lesson time into the rest of your daily life. So once you've had your lesson times, you're starting to build your vocabulary, start slipping those words into conversation. Start pointing out that thing that you learned about when you're at the park. Hey, we know how to say swings now in our language that we're studying. Hey, we know how to say slide. Use it. Point out the words on menus when you go to a restaurant. If you are like us and you live in a place where different languages are used, point out those languages on signs around you. Just find it and find ways to start using it in your everyday life. If you and your family are about to embark on the adventure of learning a second language in your homeschool together, I am cheering for you. I am always here to cheer you on. You can always send me a message, send me a DM if you have any questions, or if you just want some encouragement that yes, this does take work and it does take time, but this is so worthwhile. I genuinely believe that learning languages is one of the best ways that we can truly love our neighbor, learn a deeper understanding for people from other parts of the world or people from our own heritage, and to build connections with other people. And I also just believe it's a really, really good exercise for these amazing brains that we were given. All right, I'll be seeing you next time for more nerdy homeschooling videos. See you later.